Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. And when it comes to development news, we don't have that much concrete news, at least not for TQ. But when it comes to general news, there's definitely a lot happening in the game at the moment. I would say there's a lot of signs that a big war is coming for nullsec, with a few keep stars being challenged at this point. It's going to be interesting to see how all of that develops, whether the defenders show up, whether we get some really big battles with big losses, but it is looking like the potential is there. The powder keg is lit, so we'll keep an eye on that. It could definitely have an impact on the market. You may already have gotten that email as well, but I got notification that my pilots are now part of the mosaic that will be made for the 20 years anniversary for EVE Online. It's actually very easy. You get like a challenge whenever you log in. All you have to do is do 3 of them within the next 10 days or something like that, I think it is, and then your character or characters will be part of that mosaic. So definitely a tiny bit of effort in order to be immortalized as a player of New Eden. So I would recommend everyone listening to at least take the time and do that. And then for actual development news, well, we got a mass test last week. It's been a long time since we had one of those. I think we went up to like 130 people. Not that many, but it was many months ago that we had another mass test. This one focused on audio yet again, and I have to say, although I couldn't notice everything that the CCP announced they were changing, from my perspective, things worked out quite well. The audio was doable even when we were shooting at a structure, at a Titan, or within the big fleet fight. So the things that are changed is that for non-missile turrets, whenever the turret turns and aims at a target, that should actually generate a mechanical sound as well. And then of course we have the whenever it's firing, that you're not overwhelmed when you're in a big fleet fight, but it should use the largest or the most prominent weapons as being those that come through the audio. It definitely makes the experience a lot more doable than just a year ago or so when it comes to that perspective. So I would say CCP is working hard on continuing to improve the game. There's also an article on new hardware changes and things like that. So we're still in full evolution, and it's looking pretty interesting. When I managed to enlist into the faction warfare on CC as well, I haven't taken a look at the actual activities. I'm kind of hoping that there are new activities in HiSec that will come as well, but that's up for test. So lots of stuff in the pipeline, and definitely an interesting time to look at things. And you may have seen it from the ticker at this point as well. Lots of movements there too, so we'll see what happens. Next up, we'll take a quick look at the New Eden store and see what's happening over here. That might also explain what's happening with Plex. Well, I don't know, there's a big sale. I also received that from the email on some apparel. So if you want your character to look the best for the mosaic, this is your opportunity. For instance, some of those nice Amar coats. Well, we don't really like the Amar, but they are they have pretty fancy gold and black clothes, so I can understand that. And then let's take a quick look at the services. Nothing special to report here, so perhaps it's just the war or whatever is happening, but yeah, you may have seen it. Plex is down substantially, so let's get started on that. Pilot services coming in at 4 minutes. 400. Let's go, pilot services, and then we start as always with Plex. Here is the Plex chart. You can clearly see a departure here with the 5-day moving average pulling down and pulling away from 20-day moving average, and every single day the daily averages is also lower. So at the moment, people going for the buy orders are probably having a pretty good time. The spread still doesn't seem to be very high, but a little bit of pressure here, bringing prices down to below 4.6 million in JITA itself. And we don't see anything from player-owned trade hubs. And then we have 4.4 million for the buyer, so really a very small spread, but it looks to me like quite a bit of supply must have come in, bringing that price down. And perhaps, as as I tried to mention there, the war that's brewing in Nozick might be a part of that, right? Getting into liquid ISK so that you can immediately replace your losses and things like that might be part of the strategy there. So overall, something I did not expect to see already. What I'm used to on a regular basis is that March, April, when we start to hit that anniversary date and we start to know more about potential developments, and usually FanFest is around that period as well, that is when you start to see that decline for Plex. I feel like we're front running it a little bit. Perhaps it is because it's still definitely winter here in Belgium, coldest days in quite a few weeks actually at the moment, but we get an early decline for Plex. That's actually a seasonal given that does happen after the winter. It just seems to be starting a little bit early. We'll see if it has legs, of course. Next up, we have the multiple pilot train certificate doing the exact opposite. That's definitely not what we would expect either, but continuing to climb to the highest point of the year, 2.1 billion for the sellers and 1.8 billion for the buyers. And I have to say, perhaps there is an explanation here as well, although the volumes are quite low. I myself have also started to think, now that I took the testing the direct enlistment, perhaps this is something that I want to do with one of my alts. I still have an alt in a wormhole that can cloak. I think with just a little bit of training I should be able to have him do hacking and things like that as well, and he could easily also fly some Take one frigates, some faction frigates, stuff like that, and perhaps this is bringing a little bit more demand for the multiple pilot train certificates, because perhaps I don't want to get my main into a faction and then maybe risk nuking some of the faction reps that I don't want, right? I still might want to fly, be able to fly throughout the entirety of space, but to take part in that, that's something that a second character on my account and does a little bit of multiple pilot train certificate action might be the path that I'll take. We'll see when we get more details on what CCP has actually planned when it comes to updates for faction warfare activity. I'm not even sure if there's going to be any, but I personally expect some of them to show up. So we'll see how that develops as well. But definitely a big change here. Plex going down, training certificate 1 year high point. Next, we have the skill extractors that are hesitating at this point. They did have this much larger dip down here in January due to a sale, and it took a little bit of time for these skill extractors to get back to a reasonable or a 500 million range on this one. And so we've been hesitating for a little bit longer, but I think now with Plex going down as well, that the trend will be starting here too. You can see 5-day moving average just below the 20, but the daily averages, this is quite different. Last 3-4 days are definitely below everything. So skill extractors are now selling for 510 million, and we do see some action in the perimeter tranquility trading tower for the buyers coming in just below 500 million. So again, just a 10 million spread between sellers and buyers is absolutely tiny. This does feel like the market is gearing up for a different dynamic. Then for the injectors, here are the large scale injectors that, well, that's kind of also starting to hesitate, but at the highest point for the year. So that's actually normal for an item that is traded decently often. To reach a high point, it can't really keep growing indefinitely, especially now with the pressure on Plex and extractors that's starting to show through. So perhaps a delayed response here, but I think we'll start to hesitate for large scale injectors as well. 950 million to 880, that still feels like it has a little bit of spread compared to Plex, but I would not be surprised if basically sellers start coming in here. That'll close that gap, and that will also start to show some pressure on the price. Small scale injectors then sort of doing the same thing this week, although right at the tail end you can see again how the gap is closing, and today's daily average is definitely lower than yesterday's. At this point, 193 to 181, 12 million spread. Again, it's not 10% or anything like that, but it feels like it's definitely bigger than what we see, for instance, in Plex and the extractors at the moment. For the final injector, it is the daily alpha injector that is able, I think, to just stay in the range below 50 million. It's 50 million for the sellers, 46 million for the buyers, and the averages will probably be just below the 50 million range. But it has to be said, on this chart, 5-day moving average above 20-day moving average, they are coming together as we're not continuing to increase indefinitely. But here you can see the big difference. You get those daily averages, they're definitely dominating the top part of the chart. So it's sellers that are dictating prices for daily alpha injectors. They're just not willing to just go straight past that 50 million, past the price point that we started the CCP sale at. So market is a little bit careful, but I would not be surprised if here you can see it took whole month of November, December, and then let's up until February, so that's 1 to 3 months. I'd not be surprised if in a shorter period than 3 months we come back to a 55 million, something like that, and then we'll see how CCP reacts, of course. And finally, we have the hypercores that were sort of predicting that general feeling for the economy. Although it is a niche activity, which is the Hypernet Relay, I do feel like this is an item that is so small as well that it comes very close to a currency that might be tied to the general expectation for the economy. And here you can clearly see that we were already hesitating, and we have started to accelerate the downward trend for hypercores as well, with some increased volumes on a couple of occasions. Actually, some rather some volumes that switch quite quickly from day to day and week to week. So the hypercores are now going for 472,000, buyers coming in at 455, less than 20,000 spread here. So again, very narrow spread on this downward trend for a lot of the pilot services. We'll see if this has legs, but I think that towards the 20th, towards an anniversary for EVE Online, this has often been the case. So we might be seeing the top that was formed here January, February for Plex, and we might be starting a serious downtrend. Next up, we have the minerals. That's coming in at 1150. There we go. As always, we start with titanium, and good news for those high-sec miners that had a little bit of patience during this dip while we successfully defended the 4 ISK mark. I think now the action in nullsec is starting to drive demand as well. People are expecting losses, expecting the need for raw materials in order to replace those losses, and so you can see that 5-day moving average goes back towards the 4.5 ISK. We're still not there for the sellers, so sellers are coming in at 425 and buyers at 407, but clearly we have pushed up from that 4 ISK. We're not in danger anymore to go below that and need to find a new range. No, we actually made our way back to a 425, which for me is still like a 50-50 place, right? As long as it's below that 430, 440, I would say I would be willing to sell half my titanium and still hold off a little bit. But once we get to that 440 and towards that 450, which is already visible on the front page, so just a little bit of buying, 250 million units, and then we're in that range, that's when I would not hesitate and sell all of my titanium. So definitely a little bit more movement, a little bit more volatility here, but good news for high-sec miners, at least for titanium so far. So next up we have the pyrite chart. Very nice breakout as well, confirming what was happening last week, that demand is increasing, or perhaps supply is low enough at these low prices. And it's a combination of everything. That's usually the case actually when we look at all of this, but this is a very nice increase in price to almost 13 ISK for the sellers, and look at those buyers above 12 as well. Honestly, we've been in such a difficult period around the 10 ISK mark for so long for pyrite. I would say I would sell at this point already. Keep a little bit of powder dry if you've got reserves, but if you're actively mining, I would not hesitate to sell that pyrite right away. Mexalon should then confirm the trend, but nope, actually we can see here perhaps Mexalon is being gathered in large enough numbers quickly enough, because it is of course the least bulky, the easiest to transport. But just last week it did that shot up above 60 ISK for the price range. And where are we at now? Well, sellers are still at almost 63, buyers at 61.17. That's a very narrow spread. It does show that demand is strong enough to maintain this price, but we are not going back towards the 70 or anything like that just yet. If I look at what's happening with titanium And with pyrite, I would not be surprised if by next week we actually start to see an upward trend in Mexalon as well. So for this one, just like with titanium, I personally am still in a 50-50 place. I would sell some because we definitely have the best price in a couple of months at this point, but I would also still try to build up a little bit more. I think there's more in it than the current price range. Moving on to low sec, here is the Isogen chart. Has a very bad min-max at the tail end there, but let's see what we can show this way. So we can clearly see that we are continuing this slow upwards trend for the price, coming to 565 at the highest point on the chart. It's actually 570 already now for the sellers, and buyers forced up to a 550 range. It is a very slow burn. Why? Probably because there are these structural sellers here, 12 million, 2 million, 2 million, 2 million, 2 million. That's probably one and the same seller, all coming in at 570, 170, which is kind of a strange tactical choice. I would ramp it up slowly in these batches, and then we get another 50 million waiting down here at 572. So it's still those reserves that are keeping us in check, but the general trend is still the same. I think we are eating away at these reserves, and we are slowly realizing that a higher price point is what will or what we can expect for Isogen when we get through all of the reserves and we just look at active supply, active demand. Now, it is of course possible that we'll never get through all of the reserves. You can clearly see that there are sellers with a long enough horizon, with a good enough planning to not completely spook the market or completely block the market at a certain price point because of really huge sell orders. But they're still there. They still have hundreds of millions of units of Isogen, and they're now just trying to get the best possible price out under the current conditions, which can actually start to be influenced by active supply demand as well. If at the moment I think we're in pretty high demand situation because of the potential war that's brewing, and so we get this upwards pressure. But you should not be surprised that you see dips like here in December as well, when that activity would decline. And so it is all about timing and all about managing the volumes, I think, for those sellers that are still big holders of Isogen. And I don't think you can expect that much more upwards potential either. I think we are starting to move in this dynamic where active supply demand can also get matched. At the moment it's not matched. I think there's not enough, but it can get matched, and you'll still have those reserves that will pop up from time to time and keep us from really just getting straight to that price range that I still think is a little bit higher, but not by that much anymore. Then we've got Noxium for low sec. That's also doing that little bit of a bump, just like titanium, just like pyrite, just like Mexalon last week. So I do think again that there is a bit more need for resources. Perhaps it's just a little bit of hoarding in preparation of what can potentially happen in nullsec. But clearly now we're at 900 for Noxium. 870 for Noxium here as well for the buyer, so a very narrow spread on that bump, which should be maintained, I think, in the upcoming weeks if nullsec continues on its current path to war. Then we've got nullsec, so here is Zydrine doing the same thing. I think here you've got a more immediate response. You can clearly see that it's in February already, when the drums of war only started to be beaten, that we started the upward trajectory, and I think that's actually kind of normal. This is mostly about nullsec that will be needing those resources, and so I think they were starting to hold off on exporting too much and just starting to build up those reserves in preparation for a deployment, a slower income of those resources, and the need to very quickly respond to the need for material and things like that for their alliances. So we have gone up quite a lot for a month straight, back up to 2,400 almost for the sellers. And look at that spread here. It's actually 2,379 to 2,366. That's just nothing. So those people that need to buy Zydrine in high sec, they have no choice. We have to pay the price. Same story with Megasite. Then that's actually getting very close to a 1-year high point at 2,890 for the sellers and 2,855 for the buyers. And yeah, I think it's basically the limited supplies and the high need from nullsec itself that is causing this in the price of minerals in general. And for high-sec miners, this is actually really good news. For industrialists in high-sec, this is probably very bad news. Then finally we've got Morphite that is continuing its slow meander around 40k. 40,200 for the sellers and 36.5 for the buyers. Bit of spread here that is again opening up, and buyers trying to push to bring that price lower. I just think that that's something that's very difficult. They can get that done from time to time on a little bit too much supply from nullsec, but that lesson is learned, and really Morphite is dictated by the sellers for the price, and there is enough discipline in this market to notice when the price goes down too much, to then just hold off on the supply, bring us back to that 40k, and as long as we're there, I think everyone is happy. Volumes though clearly going up in the last week here as well. Again, another sign that preparations for war are underway. And so for those that were looking for relief in the PI market from the high prices, I don't think that's gonna happen. Let's take a look at 2040. Let's get started. Here are the broadcast notes that had a little bit of a dip last week, which was not expected in my book, but you can clearly see it lasted for a week, and now in the last couple of days we are working our way back to the 2.5 million range. 2.5 for the sellers, 2.3 for the buyers. Bit more spread than what we're used to, so we got a little bit of a breather, but clearly at the highest range of the year we are still extremely expensive. Then our construction blocks continuing to climb this week as well, and basically 1 year high point reached. 11,700 for the sellers, 11,000 for the buyers. Best price at least for the last 6 months, or if not for the entire year. And I think here compared to the spike that we had in August, we have a more structural situation. You'll have an easier time selling lots of construction blocks at these prices. So again, looking back at all of this, I started selling my PI too soon. At the moment though, you've got crazy good prices. Coolant's doing a little bit of a dip, but again, after reaching the highest price for the last 6 months, and we're still at 11,250 and 11,200 for the first buyer as well. No spread, well above the 10,000 mark, which I would say is a good price for these PI materials. And we are still selling that. So I think by next week we'll just either stabilize or continue to go back up. Enriched uranium then also hesitating at the tail end, but again you can see the last couple of weeks we've just been climbing, and we are above 13,000 for the sellers, well above 12 for the buyers. Our integrity response drones reached a 1 year high point last week, so they are taking a bit of a breather as well. But just like with broadcast note, my expectation is that this won't last very long, because anyone that's I mean, there is just enough need here. 3 million for the buyers. They're willing to go above 3 million, 3.1 million for the sellers as well. So this little pullback here will just stop, and will actually probably be seen as an opportunity to get slightly better, less expensive integrity response drones. And so the buying frenzy, I think, will take over, just like with the broadcast notes, in no time. Mechanical parts are easily plateauing at 11,700. 10,000 for the buyers though, but be a bit careful here. That's definitely a bit of a spread that is starting to open up between sellers and buyers here. Miniature electronics just climbed to a 1 year high point and then is able to plateau there. So usually you'd have a pullback, but I think under current conditions that's just not happening. 20,000 is almost for refined PI material, 18,400 for the buyers. Extremely expensive. Nano factories then are starting to just not go down anymore. So again, very pronounced 1 year high point, getting close to the 2 million range for nano factories. We are absorbing that, but you can see we're not gonna pull back to an old range like down here, a million, 1.5 million. No, we are staying at above 1.5 for the sellers, and buyers just below 1.5 million as well. So this is clearly a different reality. Demand is strong enough to keep us from going below that range. We're staying 1.5 because there is enough demand even at that price. Organic mortar applicators, 1 year high point now. Are we getting to the 1.5 here? Almost for the sellers, 1.3 million. So sometimes I think there's like harmonization that happens as well, a bit of a catch-up move here. But of course, I think very good news for all PI producers and PI holders. Recursive computing module finally absorbing this 1 year high point in January that really was pushed back a lot, but you can clearly see again that it had no legs. It's just a couple of days. We go down to that 1.25 million. We hover there, volumes go up. Everyone is just really happy, grabbing everything that's not bolted down, and eventually that supply is exhausted and we are back at another 1 year high point. 1.8 million now for the sellers, 1.6 million for the buyers. Robotics then starting to take off again as well, very close to a 1 year high point. And finally this year, 105,000 for the sellers, 100,000 for the buyers. Robotics back to its old range that I used to know, is 100,000 for robotics. Been a long time, but we've got 6 digits here on the price of robotics, and so for me that might just be the push that I needed to go back, because well, my PI for the current setup is very diverse. I've got planets making different stuff, but all of it refined, and I might just go look for that plasma planet and set up a specialized planetary, which is possible. You can make robotics on a single planet. I think that's really cool. It also is very low maintenance if you set it up right with the right amounts, and then you can just pull out 100k unit items at a time. It's very satisfying as well, but of course taxes might just be a little bit higher on those planets as well, so we'll have to spot the right one, but yeah, specialized PI material, robotics back at 100k, highest price of the year. Rocket fuels then a little bit of a pullback, but again, from where? A price above 15,000 ISK. We're still there for the sellers, 15.5 to 14,000. Self-harmonizing power cores had a very sharp increase, going towards 4 million ISK on the chart. There's a pullback from that, but again, that reality, while we do cross the 20-day moving average on the downside, you can clearly see at the tail end that we're hesitating to go even lower, because that minimum price is staying above everything else on the 5-day moving average. So it's just a new range, which is 3 million for the sellers, 2.9 million for the buyers. It's around the 3 million, and the market is desperate enough for self-harmonizing power cores that are willing to pay that 3 million price tag. Smart fab units had the same story here in February, still declining a little bit. Why is that? The unusual thing for smart fab unit is just that its volumes are very irregular, and so this one is prone to a little bit more volatility. We're still talking 90,000 to 83,000, which is not a bad price. Sterile conduits then starting to go back up as well. Sellers above 1.5, yep, quite a bit above 1.5 million, buyers at 1.4 million. So again, pretty good week on this one. Supercomputers staying above one. Well, yeah, there's just not enough of them. 164,000 to 144,000. Synthetic oil then 15,000. I mean, I can go through these a little bit more quickly, but synthetic synapses definitely interesting as well. And I think for nullsec, for the war, that the expectation that we may just need to get ready with some implants sets as well, because if it goes hot, we might lose a fleet, lose all the pods, and then you need replacements. So all of this is up 167,000 ISK, 136k for the buyers as well. Transcranial microcontrollers up for the last 10 days, back well above 100 as well, 120 to 110. So very, very expensive water-cooled CPU holding on to at 9,300. So this may look pretty bad, but again, look at where we come from volume wise and how irregular the volumes are as well. You get big jumps here up to 300,000 units, but then you've got days where it's just 20,000 units. So that was so irregular that its average price was actually below 5,000 ISK up until this fall, where, well, everything got into a higher gear for the arms race and everything, and so now we're back at a far more respectable 9K for water-cooled CPU. And then finally we get to wetware mainframes. That just sort of confirms the trend for advanced PI material. We do reach a 1-year high point, so we get a little bit of a pullback when we move a little bit too much over just a few days, but we settle at a price range that's above anything the 5-day moving average, let alone the 20-day moving average, has done for the year. 2.8 million to 2.7 million for the buyers. So PI, still the same story, and I think for now still what we can expect, that we are in super high demand because of capital production, and now with the potential war looming in nullsec, and on top of that, of course, direct enlistment. That could mean that we need even more ships as well for faction warfare. More destruction means very high prices. I will still give you guys that little bit of a warning. We know that CCP is more active in managing bottlenecks. They have done so in minerals, and in my opinion there is little doubt at this point that PI has become another bottleneck, and so perhaps they will do something about that. Very interesting comment that I got last week as well. It would be very cool if, of course, the plan was that for the 20-year anniversary they announced the shooter. It's actually integrated into the planets of New Eden, and thus it has an impact on PI. That would be very cool, but I personally think that that's perhaps a little bit expecting a little bit too much. But we'll see, of course. We can dream. It is 20 years of EVE Online that's coming, of course. Next up, advanced moon materials, 3045. Over here, I think this is more tied to Tech 2, moon mining, and I think that, well, we could see a little bit less supply because of the potential war that's looming, but overall, this is, I think, quite stable. I think one bit that has happened is that in nullsec they really have built up their industrial and mining branches. They are far more structured than anything you see in highsec, far larger as well, and so they have that stability for the items that are unique to them, and also potentially, of course, the ability to control it. Except for crystalline carbonite and for quite a few advanced moon materials, you can actually get stuff in highsec as well, so it's not as easy to do as Siderine and Megasite. And so overall here, crystalline carbonite very stable at the 150. So CCP's action here in December to nerf the output by 25% to increase the value of what's being mined there has succeeded and has not spooked this market. 149 to 148, that's no spread, it's that 150. I think everyone is actually happy here. Then for Caldari, excuse me, it's titanium carbide slowly edging up here, so still regaining basically its position as being the most expensive type of advanced moon material. 157 to 152 though is still quite doable, nothing all too special. For Minmatar we got Fernite carbide, very stable as well at 112 to 110. This one has not gained as much from the nerf to advanced moon materials, but we also know that this is partly because of the big nerf that the Minmatar heavy assault cruiser received. Used to be a major doctrine in the Imperium, largest group in EVE Online. That of course means a lot of extra demand, so it was actually able to compete with the other factions for price range, but I think now it's gonna settle at a lower price range. And then we get tungsten carbide for Amar at a healthy 165, actually up for the week, 160 for the buyers. It's definitely doing quite well here as well, but nothing dramatic, no real volatility. It's just a slow ebb and flow around the 150 for most of these carbides. For metamaterials, where I actually placed my bets, it's even worse if I'm not mistaken. So here is photonic metamaterials, had a big jump in December and now is just settling down as well, right back on that 10k that we started the year at, 10,000 to 99. So that is exactly a full recovery. And that is it. For Caldari, it's non-linear metamaterials that didn't actually even have a breakout or a plateau or anything like that. It's just slowly making its way back to 15,000, something around that range, which again, slight premium for Caldari is something that historically we have known. Bit more volatility on this one, but I think I gambled mostly on the Galente version, so that's not good news. Although I have a little bit of profit, it's not as much as what I would have liked to see. Then for Minmatar, we've got Plasmonic Metamaterials. Actually, while it had a pretty good December, you can see that we are settling at 12,360, 12,000 for the buyer, still slightly better than the Galente one, but nothing all too special from the prices before the change in December. So I think struggling a little bit with finding demand. And then for Amaris Terahertz Metamaterials, that's actually doing really well for the week here as well, making its way up to 16,250, 17,000 for the second seller and 15,000 for the buyer. So perhaps for some reason, maybe again where the war might take place or which faction has to lose out on some of its industrial capacity, Amar seems to be doing really well on the week on probably a lack of supply. Now we get the general feeling for the other advanced moon materials. Then that one has been we're also finding our new range. It's away from the bottom, but there's nothing too special to report. There were some exceptions here and there, but for me on the condensate right below 50k and quite stable, happy to be there. Ferrogel, there we go, actually breaking out to 1 year high point, but let's see. So we get a data point up here. People sold at 35,000 almost, but we're already back down to 28,026 for the buyers, which is in line where we were at the start of the year. So again, we're edging back to that full recovery, and then probably nothing too dramatic, although Fuller writes made its way to 1,000 disc and is holding on to 850 for the sellers, 825 for the buyers. Definitely a first one that is not falling back to its previous range of 700 disc in a matter of a week. This one is able to maintain a higher price point. Interesting, first one that we really that's confirming a higher price. Hypersynaptic fibers, nothing of the sort. Nano transistors trying to make its way up as well. Let's see where the sellers are at on this one. 3,350. We're not there yet, but clearly a little bit more gain might be on the books then. Finally, we get phenolic composites holding on to 1,500. Yeah, exactly. Sellers at 1,500 disc. All right, bit of volatility, a bit of a higher price point, and then our newer materials, pressurized oxidizers, plateauing at a higher price point, 14,000 to 13,500. Reinforced carbon fiber, same story, much newer item, 14,000 almost to 13,000. So a bit more spread on this one, but definitely a good price on the year. And then we have our ceramic fibers that, interestingly enough, also had a crazy spike, you could say, on this 1 year chart. It's to 500 disc. It's nothing all too dramatic, but then we're still at 370 to 370 for the buyers as well. So we are still paying that premium. That is interesting. A lot of the breakouts that happen, while they don't have legs in and of themselves, the pullback from the market is not straight back to the previous range. It does seem to be at a slight premium. We'll see how long that will last. We definitely need to get a little bit more of a feel of how all of this is evolving, but perhaps if this can start to show up in the metamaterials and the carbides as well, the volatility that I was hoping for might still make its way here. And then I think the trigger will not be the change and the nerf from CCP, but rather the action in nullsec. So, well, I'm gonna hold on a little bit longer, I think, to my advanced moon materials, and then perhaps even to my Tech 2 ships as well, which I think was already the plan last week, except on a couple for a couple of ships you can start to take profits. But let's take a look at those Tech 2 ships coming in at 37.55. There we go, and let's see what's happening. So I would expect that perhaps a bit of volatility can show up here, but the Basilisk though went back to the 180 million, and then of course selling from people that are taking profits, and some producers seeing the opportunity brings the price back down to 160, 140 million for the buyer. So clearly you're not buying at the best price anymore, but this was a sell opportunity if you're happy with the 180, which, well, it's okay, but I think if the war does happen, that there might be even more potentially there. Then we get the Cerberus, another slow step up on this one, back above the 20-day moving average at 145 million now, basically 134 million for the buyer. Still not a big move, slight volumes. It's buying though. That's interesting to me. That what probably happened here was, well, a couple hundred Cerberus ships bought by a few larger groups in all likeliness in preparation for the war, did a little bit of a push, easily absorbed by the market, but that won't last forever either, especially if advanced materials start to show some volatility due to disruptions in supply as well. The curse basically stepping up to a new range, higher of course as well, 171 to 161. I think I've got several curses that I bought down here below 130 million, so you get a slight profit, but I personally am going to go the patient route and wait for things to explode. The Damnation, very nice though, building close to 1 year high point, definitely a higher point than the last increase in price. So the Damnation is now up to 370 million, 309 for the buyers, and you even had a couple days where you could have sold these above 400 million. It does show that if you want those best prices, you better keep a very close eye on the market and be ready to pull the trigger whenever possible. Command ships have been an interesting story for sure. Then we get the Deacon, finally a logistics frigate, also breaking out over the week, coming in at 27 million. Buyers are forced up to 20 million as well. So that's potentially your new floor here for those buyers, being 20 million. Does move us in a different range for the Deacon as well. But here again, I'm kind of seeing this as preparation volumes, and that is not yet panic response to a couple of fleets being completely blown apart in nullsec. So I think we can see even more volatility. It's a bit of a gamble, granted. For all we know, things could all of a sudden die down. One party might like give up, for instance, and do everything they can to limit the damage. And then of course you'd have all of these reserves, which would make the market anemic. But for now, I think if the war explodes, we could be primed for some crazy spikes. 176 million for the Eagle, definitely another step up, probably part of the meta, although we don't see that much in volumes. You can see over the increased price range we had volumes, and now this starts to become a little bit too much for the market. So if you have a profit margin that you're happy with, again, you can sell, or you can be patient and wait for, well, crazy spikes like this, for instance, to happen. The EOS, yet another command ship, and anything that's still somewhat affordable is starting to get bought out, and not that many buying is leading to higher prices. So EOS going for 434 million, buyers staying at 270, so they know that supply will come in. And for instance, I have an EOS that I bought at 254, which is, I still remember that because I was like, damn, I should have waited a little bit longer to buy. But looking at it now, of course, that's a pretty damn good jumping point. I'm pretty happy if I can sell it above 400 million. So the sell opportunities are starting to show up here. Even the Ares doing a double top here. Going well above 50 million at 63 now for the sellers, 50 million for the buyers. You can see a little bit more structural buying is pushing the price up substantially. But could you imagine if a big fight happens and then another 100 of these interdictors are deleted from the game, and then they need one ready for their defense action in the next couple of days to protect their keep star, something like that? Well, you could get panic buying even at in the current situation, and that's when you could get an 80 million or something like that. So interesting spot to be in. The Flycatcher started last week and is confirming that, yes, again, anything that was still relatively cheap is now being bought. Look at those massive volumes, 64.5 million for the sellers, 50 million for the buyers. Definitely a very nice sell opportunity as well. For those that came in late, and where I mentioned if you still want in Flycatchers, you know, here throughout January and February, I think I did mention that Flycatcher are still your way in, and so you could have easily bought these below 40 million. Here is your 25 million potential profit already. We'll see, of course, how many sellers are ready to pull that trigger. Then we get the Guardian continuing to build. Very, very impressive as well. I did not expect that. I thought we would stop here, but nope, we are continuing to build. 180 million for the sellers, 159. And yeah, if like me, you kept an eye on things, you probably bought close to 100 million. 80% profit definitely feels pretty good. You can see how the volumes are increasing as well as the drums of war are beating. Heretic, another interdictor, and there we go, just desperate buying anything that was still somewhat affordable is coming in now. 52 million, 10 million jump in just a couple of days. A new reality, a new range, with buyers giving up 47 million here for the buyer. So it is finally coming true, guys. This is definitely the week. If you're not looking for the exceptional trade, like I'm doubling my money or anything like that, you are looking really good if throughout the summer you followed Eve Talk and you followed some of the purchases that I made there at the cheapest prices, those pronounced 1-year low points. You're looking pretty good for a lot of them. Command ships, interdictors, the logistics cruisers, all of those or most of those are looking really nice. Stealth bombers still lagging behind a little bit, although you can clearly see here for the Hound as well that we are moving to a new range. 21 to 19 million for the buyers. This is especially the buyers capitulating here. I think that is making this market quite a bit different. Ikitursa for the Triglavian, back below 500 million. Buyers coming in at 480. I'd hope for a bit more pressure before you jump in on that. Ishtar then also a little bit of a double top, close to 200 million, 190, something like that, down to 170, 151. But again, if you bought here, you're still looking pretty good. Is this the end? Well, for the Ishtar, I think I did mention that on this spike, that you may not expect this once in a lifetime or once in a couple of years sell opportunity, because it is so used in PvE as well. It has that regular volume and regular availability that usually keeps it a bit more stable than everything else. But who knows, of course, right? An Ishtar fleet needing to be replaced right away is something that can happen as well. And then the logistics frigates, which had lagged behind quite a lot. Look at this, you could still have bought this really cheaply in December and January, and I was sort of like, what the hell is happening? How are these staying so low? And I was really hesitant. I didn't pull the trigger myself, and I'm actually a little bit disappointed in myself that I didn't buy, especially here the Kirin, right? You could have bought these well below 15 million, but yeah, prep is being done here, and we're up to 31 million. You'd have a 100% profit right here for the Kirin if you jumped in just a month and a half ago or something like that. And then the stealth bombers are just slowly getting to that new range as well. So your buy opportunities are over 23 million now for the sellers. Nemesis probably same story. Yeah, a little bit of a bump. New reality. I think for the stealth bombers, if you're ready, these I would definitely hold on to them, right? If you bought these on the dips, wait for the stealth bombers, because they're gonna be used. They're gonna get whacked from time to time, and then you will see a sell opportunity that'll be far more juicy than what we're seeing here. But a lot of the others are interesting. Nighthawk command ship might look like it's lagging behind a little bit, but actually it's still at 320 million as well, so that one is edging up here. And this one actually never gave us that good of buy opportunities, only here below 250 and then close to that in August and September. So the Nighthawk always a bit more popular basically than most of the others. The Oneros back climbing as well. Look at the volumes, look at the prep, look at the we need ships, let's get ships ready. 170 million for the sellers, 152 for the buyers. Purifier, first stealth bomber. So this is far more what you would need to wait for, in my opinion, if you're holding Nemesis, if you're holding Manticore. I'm holding Manticores myself. Wait for something like this. Pronounced 1-year high point. Here we go. Purifier selling for 30 million. 24 million for the buyers, and you could have bought these for 15 million just about a month ago, and then a couple of months ago even for close to 10 million. So if you bought here, or if you still bought here, then this is indeed a sell opportunity, and wait for this pattern to show up here for the other stealth bombers before selling, in my opinion. This is not actual advice, guys. I could be completely wrong on this. Again, the one thing that could happen is if one side just gives up and decides, well, we're moving where they're not going to chase us, perhaps even like NPC Nozick or something like that. It doesn't happen, then you'll see a flood coming back of these ships and will be brought back down. So I can understand those that are like, I'm happy with my profits, I'm selling. But if the war gets into an even hotter phase, things could be very interesting and even more lucrative. That's always the market, of course. Here is the Saber interdictors, definitely wins of the week that were really struggling to do anything, right? Even here, well below 40 million, 35 million, something like that, and all of a sudden 59 million for a Saber, 50 million for the buyers. Look at that. Capitulation here as well. The new reality is coming true. Scalpel, logistics frigate, also definitely those that have changed this week. 15 million, well below the 20, I think, if I'm not mistaken. New reality, 25 million for the sellers. Buyers still holding off on these just a little bit, but the volumes are there, right? And that's something I mentioned as well just a couple of weeks ago. It can be a doctrine. Get those logistics frigates in there. It can give you the edge, so why not use them, especially when they're this cheap? And that's finally happening. Scimitar definitely lagging behind, but volumes going up. 153 million. Yeah, if you bought below 100 million on this one, you're happy. Otherwise, of course, you're not gonna get a jumping point anymore. The Sleipnir, I mentioned this one last week as well. I think that this one was one that really came back down a lot all of a sudden. I think here a little bit too many speculators decided to dump their ships, taking a profit above 300 million ISK. We're happy with that. So we came back down to a 250. We're still at 289, so unfortunately your jumping point is over. But I think comparing this to all of the other ones, yeah, the Sleipnir might be set to get back to a 350 and above, so I would be patient on this one as well. Vagabond, another slow burner, but clearly up as well, 179 million. And finally, the Zarmas coming down a lot, below 500 million, 426 to 377. So if you're looking for that oddball jumping point, this is looking pretty good for the Zarmas right here. Buy one well below 400 million. I think it should still be possible. We may just be just too late, but today's data point still has to be finalized, of course. It is a Draclavian trade though. We're talking 400 million for a single ship, so it's definitely different than buying a couple stealth bombers or something like that. But very, very, very interesting week, I would say, for Tech 2 ships, and I would definitely understand those that are deciding to take their profits. So many of them looking really good. Come on, chips, some hacks as well. And especially here, the breakout of the interdictors, and where is the logistics frigates as well. Those are just, you know, anything that's not nailed down, anything that was still at that lower price range that we've had for a couple of months is just being bought. And so very good news, of course, for those that are ready with their Tech 2 ships. I absolutely understand if you want to sell, but the biggest gamble is, of course, that the war explodes and that you get really pronounced 1 year high bonus, like a 30-35 million, like right here actually with the Kirin. How long will it last? Well, right, there might just not be enough destruction to really choke the market and make them completely desperate just yet. That could happen when things really kick off in Nozick, of course. So it's a difficult choice, as always. When do you take your profits? But if you followed along, as I've said, I think you're looking quite good already with your, well, it's paper profits up until you sell, of course. So difficult times, but quite I think fun when you've bought at the right time. Next up, Tech 3 ships, 5310. Let's take a look at these, and unfortunately yeah, it's up a little bit here for the Confessor, slightly higher volumes, 53 million to 47 million. But again, you can then see with these volumes, you're not gonna get the trade that you're getting in Tech2 ships, in my opinion. So I think there's a bit of buying happening, but again, the value proposition, right? Why would you buy Confessors at 50 million when you can buy your Flycatchers at 35 million or something like that, right? It's just not there, and so all of that is starting to really show through. And unfortunately for the tactical destroyers, right, even the Hecate, a brawler ship, might really be part of the meta. It's up to 57 million, 53 for the buyers, and the volumes are actually still quite reasonable on this one as well, but the spreads are not there. And well, it was just, you know, here we go, since December we're up in price, but seeing this as a nice trade opportunity compared to what's potentially happening in Tech2 ships, in my opinion, it is not. And then the Jackdaw proving me wrong, definitely a sharp increase to a 1-year high point. We're talking now 80 million for the sellers, 60 million for the buyers. So the Jackdaw clearly still making that move, and you can make some profits if you actually took did not follow my advice and actually invested in some tactical cruisers. I thought we wouldn't see this, but the Jackdaw is clearly proving me wrong here. So sell opportunity for the Jackdaw. I don't see we'll see that many of them, but it is there. And then finally we've got the Zwepel, still just anemic throughout all of this. Look at how much more ISK is now needed for Tech 2. Even the Jackdaw, and then the Zwepel is just, nope, 51 million, 47 for one buyer, 42 million for most. Volumes, nothing, nowhere. So I do think this shows that outside of the Jackdaw and the Hecate a little bit, I think most of these tactical destroyers are a little bit out of the meta, and part of it is probably price, of course. So this could change now that we're seeing a different dynamic in Tech2 ships. For the cruisers, I think it's a little bit different. Here is the Legion, just coming off of a 1-year high point at 250 million, but the buyers are staying above 190 at 198, close to 200 million, 206 for the buyers. That is unfortunate, right? We don't see, oh, I can grab these as well. So I think here the thing is that, yeah, more expensive ships are just a reality, even in the tactical cruisers. And so I would be patient, and I would basically hope that you bought some at the cheaper prices, and so that you've got some powder ready to pull the trigger when the sell opportunity comes. But I think buying will be a lot harder and a lot more risky. The Loki did have a couple of drops in the minimum price here, but overall it's stable at 200 million, 203 to 190 as well. So buyers clearly accepting a new reality. Even the Proteus is selling now at 223, and the buyers going up to 211. So opening up that wide margin between sellers and buyers, or dipping below certain price ranges, is not on the books anymore. And then the Tengu actually had a little bit of a sell spike as well to a 1-year high point, still at 210 for the sellers and 187 for the buyers. That's a little bit better. That's a nice spread. So if we can push close to 180 for a Tengu, perhaps a buy opportunity can happen here, but at the moment I think we have to accept there's a lot of demand out there. So getting the cheap ships is not what we're looking at. I think we're really starting to look at selling at the best price, again also without completely destroying the market with volume. So be a little bit careful, be a little bit strategic here, but those that have taken the time to follow the market in the last half year, even year or so, and bought at the right time, are going to be rolling in the ISK after all is said and done, I think. Next up, we still have the extra product for the week, and we're going back on the faction ship route. So faction battleships coming in at 5740. There we go. And ships, battleships, faction battleships. When they're there, we start with the pirate faction battleships. So the Barghest, interesting, losing a little bit of ground here. But of course, where are we at? 1.2 billion ISK for a Barghest buyers. Practically there as well, so very narrow spreads for something that's this expensive. Volume wise, 10-20 a day. It just too expensive to really see this as something to be traded, in my opinion. It's just, I think, all about affordability. Macarial, definitely a bit better, 800 million to 740 million. But at 25 a day, I wonder if the nullsec groups will field fleets of these types of ships. Then we've got the Nestor, very, very stable, I would say, on this chart, going for 1.2 billion as well. Bit more spread at 1.1, but still that's next to nothing. Then the Nightmare is going for above 1.1, and also a 100 million spread here between sellers and buyers. Slightly expensive, but overall very stable at very expensive ranges. The Balgorn is doing quite well on the 1 year chart. Availability is not there, so it's going for 1 billion now. Way more spread there, 900 million for the buyers. It's just not that popular, I'm afraid. And then the Rattlesnake, that's interesting. Definitely on this chart coming back into the more affordable range. Still 1 billion for the sellers, 937. So you're probably grabbing a Rattlesnake below 1 billion ISK. And I'll be honest, this is one of those ships that I think you want eventually in your EVE Online career. It's just the king of PvE when it comes to quite a few of the events. This will solo stuff that a lot of other ships will have a lot of problems with, especially smaller ships. Very easy as well. Just get massive shields or get massive regen. You get missiles and drones. So you get all the weapon systems that can change damage type and things like that. So here, if you don't have one, and you eventually want to get into a Rattlesnake, you want to get that PvE battleship, this is the time, in my opinion, to get 1 billion ISK together and grab it, because for most of the year you're paying well above 1 billion ISK, and so we got a pretty nice pullback here in the Rattlesnake. And then finally the Vindicator, also becoming slightly more affordable, but it's still 1.2 to 1.1 billion. And this, of course, more of a brawler ship, less safety than the Rattlesnake, but potentially can dish out more damage. So I have used the Vindicator with webs and things like that in PvE as well, but then you're basically dependent on the rats coming in close in order to really get the efficiency again from that one. I prefer just a nice steadiness of the Rattlesnake. That's slightly better here, but overall, of course, 1 billion ISK for a pirate faction battleship is very, very expensive. So it's more of a goal to set yourself, I think, as a newer player in EVE Online. Then we've got the Navy faction battleships. The Thunderchild is still one of these goals as well, and that is very interesting in my opinion. This is still seen as something that I think nullsec wants to field, because this is a very sharp increase in price in just the last couple of days, going up to almost 1.4 billion to 1.1 billion. So I think the Vorton projector, being basically an AoE or a chained weapon, quite unique in the game and in very large battles, of course, this is a force multiplier that does make it worth it to field a fleet of Thunderchilds that costs 1.4 billion a pop. Well, if it can then like destroy a lot of smaller targets, drone clearing, things like that, it is very useful. So very, very interesting here. A sharp increase in price, I think, because of nullsec. Then we've got the Apocalypse Navy issue, slightly expensive on the year. Or for the last couple of months at 720 million. Yeah, I thought we would be below the 500 million. Actually, it's been a while since we checked on these, but this is still very expensive, still very aspirational, I would say. Armageddon Navy issue, slightly better at 580 to 528 and very stable here as well. Apocalypse, let's see, is that... I think that's part of the meta, has quite a bit of drone capacity. And then it's lasers. Yeah, it's quite a few lasers actually. While the Armageddon Navy issue has that mix, right? This is clearly something you can Apocalypse Navy issue is something you can build a meta, you can build a massive gun for. So I think there's a bit more interest in that one than the Armageddon Navy issue. That's more of a solo PvE, do a little bit of everything ship, so that one's a little bit less expensive. Dominic's Navy issue, not that much interest in this one either. In general, it seems 575 to 530, still quite a capable ship in my opinion, but not part of the meta. And the Megatron Navy issue, slight bump here, right? Brawler ships always do have their place, I think. 600 million for that one. Raven Navy issue, massive dip, that's interesting. Availability up quite a bit, 540 to 510. I think this could be one of those consequences of the Caldari faction warfare really doing very well, dominating the Galente at the moment. We'll see what direct enlistment can do to that, but this is quite affordable. And this is also potentially, like I would say, if you're like pretty new, Raven Navy issue for missions and then going up to the Rattlesnake is a step that you could consider. It's half the price. Then we get the Scorpion Navy issue. That's, well, actually up a little bit, 560 to 480 million. So not much to say here. Volumes are also very low. And then for Minmatar, that could be more Nullsec. Look at that, big volumes, definitely up in price, back up to 650, 537, and down here just a couple of weeks ago we were at 510 million. So I would not be surprised if in footage from Nullsec you see some Tempest fleet issue fleets as well. These have probably been bought in preparation. And then Typhoon fleet issue, alright, actually also a little bit of a volume bump, slight price bump, not as big, but also going up to 600 million ISK on this one. For faction battleships, I think the new reality at the moment is that these are definitely aspirational ships, so I think this is a change that CCP wanted to bring into the game as well. Right? Eventually you want that shiny high-sec battleship. Well, it is gonna be a billion ISK. I think back in the day this was like 300 million ISK for some of these, so definitely a very big difference. And you need to go really to what is it used for in order to find out where price responses will happen. Thunderchild, for instance, Nullsec, big fleet, massive fleet action. That's where the Thunderchild will shine, and its weapon system will be quite unique. But for a lot of the others, it's more about affordability, such as here, for instance, for the Tempest fleet issue. Other than that, very difficult to say where all of this is going, because of course we first of all have Nullsec that potentially might be interested in at least some of the ships, like I think they were interested in the Tempest fleet issue. But then of course we've got direct enlistment. Will that mean more supply of LP and things like that, bringing prices down potentially? That is something that could happen as well, but all of that then depends on what CCP announces around direct enlistment, in my opinion. So overall, yeah, for battleships, very difficult to decide to trade in this one. In my opinion, it's more of I want to fly that ship, save up for it, grab it, build it, and then enjoy it. So that's my take on this part at the moment. Anyways, that's it for this Eve Talk, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time.